Hi folks, and welcome to the next edition of Serverless Craic with myself, Dave Anderson, technical fellow at Bazaar Voice and author and contributor at the Serverless Edge.
Mark McCann, architect at Globalization Partners and author and contributor at Serverless Edge.
Michael O'Reilly, software architect at Globalization Partners and contributor with Serverless Edge. Hello, everyone.
Well, so we're going to continue our series on the modern cloud. This is, I think, a 5 or 6 part series. We've talked about our introduction to modern cloud and took it from a kind of a CEO, chief product person, developer perspective. Today we're going to talk about the technical leader, or the CTO perspective, which we sometimes talk about as kind of long-term value. If you do have a modern cloud, approach, there is a long-term value proposition that I think as a CTO you need to be on top of. This is a difficult one because the CTO will often have to try and almost not justify it, but have the rationale for this modern cloud, which may seem like a big initial investment, and it's often hard to see if it pays off. One of the big pressures I think straight out of the gates for a CTO is the platform choice. You kind of have to make a bet on a platform, and you almost have to guess that how is that platform going to evolve in the next maybe 10 years. You don't want to be picking you don't want to bet the wrong horse around a platform. You have to be able to not or have a two-way door, as Amazon would say, not a one-way door into your platform. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that? I mean, is there any, we'll not talk about any specific names, I suppose, but there's definitely bad platform choices you could make in the modern cloud.
Yeah, it is a hard one to kind of get into without sort of naming specific platforms, but certainly at a when you like to think at a CTO level, there, it's at an organizational level, and they're kind of working with resources and where they apply certain resources to add business value, and then you also, to your point, Dave, like looking at evolution, what innovations are currently out there, and and kind of making a decision, based on your business, what is that, what is the bet that we're effectively going to make here on the platform itself,
Well, there's another one as well. Decision you have to make. Are you actually going to pick a platform? Are you going to stay platform agnostic?
No, okay.
Our stuff will work on all of the clouds.
Yes.
So we can have this big lever we pull and switch clouds automatically, or we'll do 3 clouds at the same time. That's a really good decision.
And that is a subject and a half to unpack. Yeah.
So I mean, I famous with one of our not name any names, but somebody once says, let's just get good at one cloud before we start picking 3 clouds, which I thought was a great quote from a leader.
Yeah. And I think it's you mentioned the Meg, it's about understanding the needs of your business and making sure that your choices can help you meet those needs now and in the future, and being able to evolve from what you're doing today to meet those needs to where you need to get to in the future is critical, right? So you want to make sure that you're not over engineering stuff and you're not adding abstraction layers that come with a cost. They come with a price. So if you want to be that flexible sort of provider or platform that can do everything for everybody, there's a huge price you have to pay to maintain that. And is that price worth it? And in most cases, it's probably not, right? You're probably best minimizing your liabilities and minimizing your platform and having the sort of the thinnest viable sort of platform that you can get away with to meet those needs. And then, to the evolutionary angle, you can't stand still, right? As a CTO, you have to create that environment to encourage evolution, because we're seeing it across all the cloud providers. They're rapidly improving, they're rapidly introducing new capabilities, new features, new services. And if you are not setting your organization up to evolve, frequently or and continuously improve, you're going to get left behind by the organizations that can and do evolve continuously and do improve continuously. So you may have moved into the cloud and stuck everything on S3 and a couple of VMs 5-6 years ago and thought, hey, yeah, we're good, we're modern cloud, and you haven't evolved. You're going to get left behind by those who continuously evolve and improve their cost, improve their performance, improve their security posture by leveraging these new features, capabilities that are emerging. So as a CTO, I guess you got to make sure that you're setting up yourself and your company to leverage modern cloud effectively. And the way to do it is to constantly evolve. And worthy mapping is a great way of doing that at the CTO level, right? To understand.
I mean, and one thing I'd say, like, I don't think there is a single right answer. You'll get people on various ends of the spectrum, say like containers versus serverless or, whatever, right? I think, the truth in a lot of cases is in the middle. And you talk about like rapid development sometimes. I mean, you want to give yourself every opportunity to get out the market, to try out new, new concepts, expose like a new business opportunity, get out there, try something out. And as you scale things up, different factors apply, and you may decide that you have to kind of change tack, but you kind of want to arm yourself with as many building blocks as possible. And a lot of that may mean that, you may have like separate platforms or separate ways of sort of building things that really pertain to that really support your business model. But this is where I think like it's interesting to kind of look at things like, innovate, leverage, commoditize, and pioneer, settler, town planner. You gotta know when you're in certain modes, and you gotta organize, mixed methods, all that sort of stuff. But you gotta give teams the right capabilities to operate within those spaces. It'd be a really bad scenario if you're a pioneering team, you're trying to get out the market, but you've got a 3-month kind of provision kind of delay because somebody needs to click a button to provide you some compute. You gotta think about things in those kind of scenarios, I think, as a CTO. And
I think as well you have to actually deliberately pick and select a platform. Be very clear about that. Another thing you want to be clear on is that if you're too clever, you may have quality issues, because you want to pick a platform that will give you a certain amount of quality. And then once you're on a platform, a modern cloud platform, you want to, and something we've talked about a lot, is having that problem prevention culture, is actually thinking about, how can we build well so we don't have any problems, as opposed to a problem creation culture where you're celebrating people for fixing crazy stuff that should never have been built in the first place. And that's obviously well architected is a great way to kind of put the kind of the guardrails in place. So you're saying like, this is our platform, and here's our standard, and that's many decades of good practice baked into a single sentence. Or you don't want a CTO who's thinking that's fine, but we're different, so we're going to write a lot ourselves. It's not what you need, especially if you're a startup. It's crazy.
I think establishing those sort of principles is critical at the CTO level. Like, what are your principles for containers versus serverless? What are your principles for innovation, for your leadership principles for some of this stuff that people can, as you want to empower and enable the teams to make these decisions, but you want to arm them with good principles that they can assess their choices against. Right. So as they're starting to pick technologies, as they're starting to leverage these building blocks that you talked about, Meg, they're assessing it against the core principles from the CTO and from the organization about, well, how do we want to assess this thing? And like, as a CTO, you want to create that environment for success, but you want to enable the teams to sort of run with it and embrace it and challenge you on that as well, right? So you want that feedback loop on what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, and I think
there's also.
Sorry, Dave, go ahead.
No, go for it.
No, and what I was just going to add on that is, kind of building on that. So it's almost kind of that shared responsibility thing, and and I think it's from a CTO perspective, as a team, we'll kind of apply well-architected approaches to our implementations and to our architecture. But then again, just trusting in your service provider, your cloud providers, whatever, in relation to what they talk about with regard to HA or availability, and you got to factor all those into your decisions as well, I guess, as a CTO when you're obviously in platform selection. I hear there's a lot of mistrust sometimes you perceive in industry just around, well, our stuff is we've got to be available all the time. Depends what industry people are in, but for me, it's kind of those sort of conversations at that level. Got to factor into things.
Yeah, I think that's really important, especially for a technical leader, architect, or CTO. And a good example of that is using industry standards. Look for a standard somewhere else and use it. There's nothing, and sometimes there's a mistrust that people don't do that. I enjoy hearing stories where people said like, yeah, we're going to do eventing, but we're going to write our own eventing standard. and you're like, you're a pizza company. What are you doing? Are you crazy? Just use something else. It's not like your Netflix. So like the type of companies that actually have to customize something, there's a very, very small number of them, and they're doing like technically extremely pioneering work. 99% of the companies can just use the standard that's out there and be very successful, because whatever your business is, the fact that your event structure is not quite optimal is not going to bring the business down. So I think there's something about using standards and being very clear, but not deviating from them unless there's an exceptionally good reason, and usually there's not.
Yeah.
And that comes back to bite you with data and security and things like that.
Yeah, I think it was a modern cloud for the CTO. They should be able to ask for a well-architected solution and set up their organization to be able to answer that question. So as a CTO, you should be able to ask all of your leaders, are we delivering a well-architected solution? And if you've done it right, if you've empowered and enabled and educated your teams, they should give you an informed answer.
Yeah.
And also the fact about, if somebody says, what does that mean? You go, here's an 86-page white paper from Amazon, go read it. It's like, there's no debate, there's no gray area. It's like, no, it's very clear.
Yeah.
Go read.
And the hardest thing, I guess, as well, is like, obviously at the CTO level, you've got to deal with regulations and compliance.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like SOC compliance, for example. And, at a certain points in time, managed services may not be 100% SOC compliant, but typically what you find is over a short period of time, they do become very compliant. And
or guess what? You ask for them to be compliant.
You ask for them to be compliant, and you got to be on that, and so you got to factor that into your decisions as well, and sometimes, unfortunately, what people do is they do go down the build your own, and then before you know it, the teams or the orgs that waited are then surpassing them because they don't have to invest in all this ops, kind of maintaining their own custom role sort of implementations. So those sorts of things as well is those are things you do need strategies around and be able to kind of solve for. And there typically there's many ways to kind of skin a cat in the modern cloud with regard to certain approaches. So there's always been options in my experience, but you got to be aware of those and embrace them.
Real options.
We talked about this for the developer sort of persona about continuous learning. As a CTO, you might not need to know all the fine-grained details of some of these new services and capabilities that are emerging, but you need to be able to ask your team about them, and you need to be able to ask well-informed questions about leveraging these things. Because, like you said, Mike, waiting might be the best option, but if you're not well-informed, you'll not know that, and you might make a decision you'll regret later.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I suppose closing off then, I mean, when you think of we've talked about this a lot, but just briefly, you think of the role of the CTO in modern cloud, sustainability has to be something that they start thinking about. Whatever application or stack you build in the cloud, there eventually will be a carbon burn measure for how much carbon you're using, and if you design badly, that can be very high. So that's something that's still quite new, but I think as we go on, there'll be more metrics and regulations and expectations around your sustainability score. So that's definitely one to watch.
Yeah.
Do we now have a metric for technical debt?
Yeah, I think it's a good forcing function for all of the other good practices we just talked about. So, if you're able to deliver a well-architected serverless first solution across your entire org, as a CTO, you should be able to become, you're basically meeting the right mark for delivering a sustainable solution, right? If you're doing all that, you'll not be far off being sustainable.
Yeah. So more to come on that.
And if you can hand that off to someone who's going to sort of do all the work operationally to kind of make that a wee bit more sustainable, and you should be considering that as an option.
Yeah. Good luck. Good luck optimizing that if you've just done a whole lot of custom build madness.
Yep, 100%.
So that's the crack. Well, more to come on that, but we'll leave it at that. I think we'll probably just close off our modern cloud session next time around. So please come have a look at the blog on serverlessage.com. Give us a follow on Twitter at serverlessage, and you can pre-order the book now, The Flywheel Effect, on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Right, thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.